Yukito was a sad loser who got sacrificed by a cult to please their deity. However, when he gets reincarnated in a world without God, he decides to start his own religion so he can do unholy things to his hot followers, but ends up getting a thick baddie to fall for him instead. At the beginning, Yukito is about to be submerged in water by his father, who believes Mitama, their god, will save him. Then, Yukito is submerged in the water, and as the cold water surrounds him, he prays to be reborn in a world without gods or religion, and just a simple life with friends. The next moment, he wakes up to a pink-haired baddie, a Lurl, who finds Yukito unconscious near a river, and using her knowledge from a strange book, she becomes curious and tickles his pickle. Yukito suddenly wakes to the awkward scene, and panicked Lurl rushes him back to her village to get him dressed. Afterward, she apologizes and offers to take care of him until he recovers, and since she works at a restaurant, Yukito is allowed to eat there for free. He soon realizes he's been reborn into a different world, and expects a thrilling life full of adventures, but quickly gets disappointed as he has to work on a farm instead. Suddenly, a villager named Roy appears, jealous that a Lurl helped Yukito, and claims every girl belongs to him. Then, another villager, Klen, intervenes and offers Yukito a task. Klen hands him a dagger, and Yukito thinks he's finally going to hunt monsters. But Klen points to a vineyard and tasks Yukito to harvest grapes, which Yukito mistakenly believes to be a test to become an adventurer. So he goes and harvests too much grapes, which the villagers don't know what to do with. But having knowledge from his old world, he turns them into wine and gains the villagers' respect. A Lurl's hot older sister, Shilurl, compliments Yukito for making them booze and encourages everyone to keep drinking. But Yukito is off to the side, getting drunk by himself, frustrated that he didn't get the adventure-filled, baddie-clapping life he wanted. Months pass, and despite the lack of real magic, Yukito begins to enjoy life here. Yukito quietly thanks God for this second life, but stays silent when a Lurl asks what he calls God. The next day, they take Yukito to the imperial capital, where he sees a crowd gathering for a ritual where people voluntarily end their lives. Horrified, Yukito is pulled away by a Lurl, who explains this system is called End of Life, a government system that orders people to die when they are deemed to be a useless scumwath no purpose to society. That night, a Lurl surprises Yukito in bed. She says she has read a freaky book and wants to try a technique to boost male vitality, going as far as bringing a rope, but Yukito quickly calms her down. A Lurl then reveals that their village is actually an isolation zone for outcasts who don't align with the country's ways. She shows him the mark she was branded with and explains that everyone there bears scars from society's cruelty. Just then, a Lurl notices the stone necklace Yukito is wearing, and he recalls how his father told him it was a protective charm. So, he decides to put it on a Lurl's neck and gives it to her, which she gratefully accepts. Seeing a Lurl wear it makes Yukito blush, and he gently tells her to sleep. The next morning, Yukito wakes up to find the restaurant closed and Roy hurt. When asked, Roy reveals that he got hurt for fighting the authorities, as it's time for outcasts like Shilurl and a Lurl to be taken away, and he didn't tell Yukito earlier to avoid upsetting a Lurl. Suddenly, Klen pulls up with his ride, and Yukito gets on it to race to save the girls. Upon arrival, he defeats every guard in his way to save the girls, but while a Lurl is still alive, he sees Shilurl's dead body hanging, which enrages him. Yukito demands to know why they need to die, and their chief, Bertrand, steps forward, calling them dangerous deviants from the isolation camp. Refusing to accept this, Yukito is stabbed by Bertrand, and as he collapses, he watches a Lurl die. Crawling through the blood, Yukito remembers his father's words that the deity Mitama will save him if he believes in her, and in his mind, he wants nothing more than to save these honest people who don't deserve to die. Holding his necklace tightly, he wishes to save the villagers, and a bolt of lightning suddenly tears through the sky. Bertrand panics as, in that moment, a figure descends from the sun, the deity Mitama. She embraces Yukito, telling him she heard his call, but when she sees that he's dead, she vengefully consumes everyone around her and eats their souls. Then, she revives both a Lurl and him, and a Lurl, confused but relieved, sees Mitama crawling over Yukito. Though he doesn't recognize her, she introduces herself as his god, the one closest to him. After Mitama reveals herself as a god to Yukito, she revives everyone who took part in the end-of-life ritual. The city crowd quietly disperses, showing no interest in the miracle they just witnessed. Yukito struggles to accept that Mitama is truly divine. But he returns to the village with her, Allurel and Shilurel, shocking the villagers, who had assumed they died in the ritual. Roy tries to embrace Shilurel in relief, but she avoids him, and the villagers celebrate their return with heavy drinking. Inside Allurel's restaurant, Yukido feels a wave of relief after they survived. But he's also deeply worried as he's now a target of the imperial capital. With no military, no economy, and no means of defense, Yukido knows their only chance is Mitama. Meanwhile, in Allurel's room, Mitama finds herself being questioned by Allurel and Shilurel. Mitama tries to leave, but Allurel insists she get dressed first. When asked about her relationship with Yukido, Mitama says she's his god, but Allurel doesn't even know what a god is. Mitama explains she's bound to Yukido until the day he dies, and this stuns Allurel, who starts to think Yukido might be married or into girls with flat plots like Mitama. While changing, Mitama hears from Shilurel that Allurel has feelings for Yukido, and surprisingly, this comforts her. Allurel, confused, asks to be turned into a baddie with no melons like Mitama, but Mitama gently thanks her for caring about Yukido and encourages her to grow even closer to him. Downstairs, Yukido talks to Klen about the country's structure. Klen explains that the end-of-life system has been around for centuries, created by the Emperor and Parliament. Suddenly, Mitama crashes into Yukido, knocking him down, and she clings to his back while Roy gawks at her beauty and tries to propose. Mitama flatly rejects him, and Roy screams in pain while something's growing underneath. Allurel and Shilurel hear him and are disgusted. Yukido introduces Mitama as someone from his homeland and asks her about her divine powers. Mitama claims she can do anything, even wipe out entire armies with a burst of water. Yukido gets an idea that if she's truly this powerful, he can use her to protect the village. And maybe this is his chance to become a cheat in this new life, as after living with a monotheistic sect, he understands the power of worship. Mitama wants to demonstrate her water power in the restaurant, and Yukido panics, worried she'll flood the place. But she only spills wine on the table, and she pauses, sensing something is wrong. She looks through her followers and sees that it's still zero, and she explains to Yukido that gods grow stronger through belief, and Yukido doesn't genuinely believe in her yet, not even after everything. Just then, someone rushes in with a warning that the imperial capital has begun an investigation. The villagers panic, regretting how much wine they drank. Roy loudly declares that Yukido will save them, lifting everyone's spirits. But Yukido quietly leaves, overwhelmed by guilt and pressure. He heads to a hot spring, terrified that he's doomed the village. As he panics, Mitama suddenly appears beside him, and Yukido yeets her by the hair, being surprised. Turning away, he confesses that he feels responsible for everything. Mitama urges him to run away with her, saying that she's been watching him from the beginning, and she knows how much he's suffered. She wonders if he'll choose to run again, but Yukido tells her he won't. He doesn't want to repeat the same mistakes caused by his father and their sect. And then a new idea sparks. If Mitama draws strength from belief, they can start a religion. And if enough people follow her, she'll grow strong enough to protect the village. The next day, Roy imagines worshipping Mitama as a punishment where he has to lick her toes and bark like a puppy, which he enjoys, and eventually decides to become her follower, which gains her one follower. Still, only Yukido is officially connected to her, even though he hasn't made a full commitment yet. Yukido begins planning as a leader of Mitama's religion, and if he can gather thousands of followers, Mitama's power could grow immense. She says that with enough belief, she could incinerate cities or part the sea, but miracles attract followers, and she's too weak now. So Yukido turns to his past, remembering how his father once taught him how to write speeches that move crowds. Mitama, however, insists she should speak instead, believing her divine wisdom from billions of years will impress humanity. Yukido, Mitama, Roy, and Allurel head out together. Mitama tries to gain believers by declaring that she knows everything about Yukido. She reveals embarrassing childhood secrets, including one when he was gooning to Johnny Sins.
Oh, hell no! Hell no!
And Yukido instantly regrets giving her the stage. Still, Roy and Mitama begin praying, and Allurel joins in. A curious crowd forms, and Yukido tries to use psychological tricks to prove Mitama's power. He brings up Allurel's romantic issues, hoping to create a moment of vulnerability, and it starts working, until Mitama ruins it by reading Allurel's mind. She tells Allurel she has a weight problem, specifically her big melons, and claims Yukido prefers small ones. Allurel becomes devastated and begs someone to cut hers off, but Yukido stops her, scrambling to fix the mess. Switching tactics, he lets Mitama try something else, from stabbing Roy to making him fly. But they all fail. She heals him, but the crowd still doesn't believe she's a god. Defeated, Mitama and Yukido return to the restaurant, both feeling hopeless. Mitama, now embarrassed, says she feels useless like a certain water god from a different show. Yukido realizes that his father was right, and creating a religion is difficult. Suddenly, Allurl bursts in with Chilchil, her low-budget CGI pet, who has eaten poison. Yukido panics and suggests getting help or medicine, but Chilchil says the city doesn't care about pets. With no treatment or knowledge, they feel helpless as midnight nears and Chilchil worsens. That night, Yukido and Mitama return with herb, and Yukido prepares the herb as medicine and gives it to Chilchil, who drinks it, but then vomits. Time runs out, Chilchil dies, and Allurl and Chilchil break down in tears. Mitama watches this unfold and is surprised, as this isn't something the old Yukido would have done. Then, a glowing light begins to shine from Chilchil's body, and using the last of her strength, Mitama revives him. Chilchil opens his eyes. Allurl and Chilchil cry again, but this time in joy. They thank Mitama for saving him, with both girls become true followers, and Mitama's power surges more than ever before. Yukido notices something important, that, when Roy follows Mitama, her power grows only a little. But when someone like Allurl witnesses a miracle and believes, Mitama's power increases far more. Now confident, Mitama becomes bold, and she promises the girls even greater displays of power. Then Allurl makes a surprising request, and she asks Mitama to revive the soldiers who once took their lives. Yukido thinks it's a terrible idea, but Mitama does it anyway. Everyone stares in shock as the dead soldiers are brought back, but something's off. Their chief soldier, Bertrand, doesn't look like himself, and no one recognizes him because Mitama has accidentally turned him into a girl with creamy assets.
Yeah, boy.
Elsewhere, an Archon named Adder receives an order from the Emperor to eliminate a strange beast in the forest. She follows the command without hesitation and slays the creature with ease. Meanwhile, Bertrand tries to enter the Imperial City but is stopped by the guards. They don't recognize him anymore and accuse him of mocking their respected knight. Bertrand insists he is that knight, but they don't believe him, as he doesn't have a glizzy anymore. With nowhere else to go, Bertrand returns to the woods and starts thinking about life as a girl. Suddenly, Roy appears and tries to get freaky with her, but Bertrand is unable to draw her sword, as her loyalty binds her to fight only for imperial justice. Yukido intervenes just in time, hurling Roy away. Bertrand attempts to attack Yukido, but stops, as Yukido understands his devotion to the Emperor, stopping her from drawing her sword. Yukido mocks her for that loyalty, reminding her that the Emperor abandoned him the moment he changed into a she. Seeing Bertrand homeless and unsure, Yukido invites her to the village. Bertrand blushes, moved by Yukido's kindness, and decides to follow, seeing him as someone useful to cling to. The next day at the farm, a strange beast appears. Mitama and Yukido rush in. Mitama summons a divine sword and gives it to a fellow farmer, Ricky, urging him to use it. But Ricky is defeated quickly, as the sword had been resting underwater and had lost its power. Still, Mitama defends the weapon's strength, citing its legendary past. As the beast moves in, panic spreads until Bertrand steps forward, and with one swift strike, she cuts the creature in half, stunning everyone. Yukido notices something unique about Bertrand's sword and realizes he's found a key piece for his next move. Yukido uses this moment to promote Mitama's religion, and he declares that Bertrand is the holy knight of their faith and promises that no one will be harmed by beasts again if they believe in Mitama. The crowd begins to convert. In Allurl's restaurant, people can only order drinks if they join the religion. Yukido also introduces a new invention, a cooler pot that keeps food fresh, but it's only available to followers. Unknown to most, Roy is the one crafting these pots, and exhausted from days without sleep. Roy continues his work willingly because Mitama asked him to. Yukido comes up with another method to grow the faith, special blessings from Mitama. Once people start getting cured of sickness, a line forms outside the restaurant. At sunset, Yukido tells Mitama their religion is growing fast because the villagers have never heard of religion before, and since they have no strong beliefs initially, they're easy to convert. Yukido explains that the structure they need is one built on personal gain, not devotion. Mitama laughs, teasing him about how his alternate world knowledge is finally useful. Then she celebrates, as she now has hundreds of followers, enough to become powerful if the Emperor attacks. Everything is going smoothly, but Yukito starts to wonder how many followers it would take to face the empire. Suddenly, Bertrand shows up in a maid outfit, forced into it by Allurel and Shillerel. She collapses in shame and begs Yukito to end his life, but Yukito ignores the request and instead asks how many soldiers are in the Imperial Army. Bertrand thinks Yukito is planning a rebellion, but warns him that the army isn't the real threat. The Archons are, as their beings strong enough to destroy mountains, empowered by the Emperor. Intrigued, Yukito returns home and asks Mitama if she can destroy a mountain. She jokes that she could eat a mountain of food, but then admits she could destroy one if she had 10,000 followers. There, Yukito realizes they still don't have enough, and his hope begins to fade. The next day, Bertrand appears again in a different maid outfit, and Yukito flirts with her like prime Johnny Bravo to get a closer look at his sword. When asked about how she cut the beast, Bertrand explains that the weapon was a gift only given to high-ranking officers, so she demonstrates it by cutting a small mountain with ease, which makes Yukito think that it's magic. When asked where he can buy it, Bertrand informs him that the Emperor himself enchanted it, and only he can create such blades. Feeling discouraged, Yukito calls a meeting with the smartest minds in Mitama's religion, Klen, Shillerel, and Chilchil. He warns them that the Empire could strike at any time, and Shillerel brushes it off. But Yukito insists they're under surveillance. He asks if the village could be moved elsewhere, but they say no, as an attack could happen during the relocation. From Shillerel, Yukito learns that this village is just one of many isolation camps, and Shillerel explains that the camps act as buffers, positioned around the capital. As the meeting continues, Shillerel begins drinking. Her behavior attracts more customers, and the restaurant becomes chaotic. Watching everyone enjoy themselves, Yukito decides to join in, setting aside the meeting for now. Hours later, drunk and restless, Yukito lies awake thinking about how to get more followers. Shillerel sits beside him, comforting him and calling him her brother. Yukito asks if she understands their situation, and she admits she doesn't get the religion but believes it's a force for good, as after all, Mitama and Yukito saved her and Allurel. Her words remind Yukito of something his father once said, which is to stop overthinking. His father grew a massive following by defeating a scam cult and taking over their land. Many of the cult's followers were warriors who respected strength, and his father had told him then that if he wanted followers, take their land. The next day, Yukito meets Klen on a hill. He admits he still has no concrete plan but believes a cultural shift could change everything. Klen encourages him to trust his instincts, and Yukito, feeling hopeful, says he's ready to lead the village for the next 500 years. Meanwhile, Adder defeats another strange beast, but grows frustrated, tired of repeating the same task. She wants to wipe out the isolation camps in the Emperor's name, but the beasts keep appearing and threatening the capital. She accuses her higher-up, Loki, of stalling, thinking he's preparing to betray the Empire. But Loki brushes her off, calls her blindly loyal, and gives her yet another order to eliminate more beasts. A month later, Bertrand shows up in an even creamier maid outfit for Yukito, but she runs into Adder, who she notes is not from the village and didn't even notice her presence. Scanning Bertrand, she sees through her disguise and realizes Bertrand's true identity, but she's confused by the gender change. Bertrand tries to explain that she joined a new religion, but Adder doesn't care. She attacks, and Bertrand, unable to match her strength, is defeated. She begs her to end her, but she wants answers about his transformation. Dragging her along, Adder heads toward the village, and when she arrives, she's stunned. She sees people riding tractors, operating turbines, and improving their lives in ways she never imagined. The isolation camp has changed, and she doesn't understand how. A month ago, Yukito, Mitama, Klen, and Shillerel gathered for a meeting to discuss their next move. While sipping tea, Yukito announces that he intends to gain 10,000 followers before the Archons catch up to them. Klen is skeptical, pointing out that the village only has 2,000 residents, but Yukito has a strategy. He realizes their religion lacks cultural influence, so he plans to expand Mitama's faith by offering rewards to those who believe. To start, they need to broaden their reach, which requires bringing the villagers into a more modern era using Mitama's powers. Mitama is overwhelmed with emotion when Yukito finally expresses belief in her, and she uses her divine power to create a tractor for Roy, astonishing the villagers with how much faster farming becomes. Yukito seizes the moment to introduce Mitama's religion, claiming that using the tractor requires faith in her. The villagers quickly begin to idolize the machine, and through that, they start to accept Mitama. Yukito urges her to produce more tractors, and Mitama obeys, though the effort weakens her. Still, as her followers grow to nearly 1,000, she regains her energy, nourished by their devotion. Yukito reminds her that people are worshipping the tractors, not her, and this realization wounds Mitama's pride, making her feel like she's less important than a piece of machinery. Yukito is frustrated as 1,000 followers won't be enough, and they need more, and fast. At that moment, a Laurel enters, struggling to carry a container of water. She spills it, slips, and ends up drenched. Watching her soaked outfit gives Yukito an idea, and he orders Mitama to install plumbing in every home. Then, Laurel is amazed she no longer has to fetch water from the well, and she says Shillerl will be impressed. Just then, Shillerl walks in looking like a snack, and she sprays Yukito with a sprinkler and declares that everyone should wear swimsuits now, simply because she likes them. Outside, Yukito finds a brand new swimming pool filled with girls. Then, he and Roy join in, spotting Laurel and Shillerl in swimsuits. Shillerl urges Laurel to show off her look to Yukito, and he compliments her, making her blush, while Roy, overwhelmed, has a period from his nose. Exhausted, Mitama drags herself to Yukito, complaining that he made her pump underground water, install plumbing, and set up sewers. She reveals that she is the god of the land, but Yukito is unimpressed, much to her dismay. Later, Mitama sips water from the new plumbing system in her room. Though drained, she feels recharged by the growing number of worshippers, now in the thousands. She believes she finally has enough power to deliver divine punishment to the Empire, but Yukito disagrees. He believes their religion still lacks something crucial, exclusivity, and to fix that, Yukito and Mitama introduce electricity to the village. By midnight, villagers crowd Laurel's restaurant, excited to eat and drink under the electric lights. Laurel and Shillerl wear spicy outfits for the exclusive event, and while Laurel feels embarrassed, Shillerl boosts her confidence. Before they serve anyone, Yukito stresses that exclusivity is key to building religious identity. As the celebration continues, Roy makes a move on Shillerl and gets kicked in the face. He crashes near Laurel and drunkenly reaches for her assets, imagining opening more restaurants with even bolder uniforms. Shillerl responds by smashing a light tube over his head, silencing the party. Elsewhere, Yukito, Bertrand, Clen, and Mitama stand on a cliff. Yukito wants to show how electricity represents progress and exclusivity. They're amazed by the lights in the village, but Bertrand notices that Mitama looks exhausted. Yukito dismisses the concern, convinced she'll bounce back with more worshippers. Clen is stunned by the electricity, noting that not even the Empire has anything like it. Bertrand questions him, and Clen reveals he once worked in the Imperial Palace. He lacks the isolation camp's branding mark and chose to live in the village on his own terms. Mitama silently observes, and when asked, she says she's thinking about the different types of humans in the world. Clen tells Yukito that people still don't fully trust him, but they are intrigued by his talk about God. Yukito explains that in his world, there are two types of gods, one to explain the unexplainable and another that represents religion. Though he's not a scholar, he believes there's nothing that can't be explained. Clen smirks, and Bertrand suggests that perhaps the Emperor is like a god, who is used to explain what people don't understand. Yukito takes this seriously and begins to wonder if the Emperor truly is a kind of god. The next month, Mitama's followers grow to 2,000. Suddenly, Roy bursts in with news that Bertrand has been beaten by a little girl. Adder, the attacker, interrogates Bertrand, trying to find out who is building things that only the Emperor or the Archons should be capable of, but Bertrand stays silent. Adder receives a call from Loki and reports the camp's progress. Loki replies that only the Emperor, an Archon, or a traitorous Archon from the past could do such things, and because Adder isn't one of them, Loki orders her to destroy the camp. Adder attempts to drag Bertrand back to the city, but when she refuses, she threatens to break her limbs. Bertrand screams, and Mitama arrives just in time, launching an attack. She tells Yukito that Mitama is fighting the anchor they discussed before, and Adder, disgusted by Mitama's talk of family and gods, fires a powerful beam to end her. Mitama survives the blast and declares herself the ruler, not his puny emperor. Adder thinks she's bluffing until Mitama summons her monstrous plants, and with the element of surprise, Adder is restrained. Mitama hugs Yukito in relief, thinking the fight is over, but only having a few thousand followers, her plant trap begins to break. Adder reveals her final weapon and says it requires the Emperor's permission, but decides to use it anyway to destroy the camp. Mitama, drained, tries to end the fight quickly, but Adder obliterates her monsters. Panic sets in as Mitama's power fades, and Adder gains the upper hand. Yukito yells at Mitama, as she's their only hope, and using the last of her strength, Mitama calls upon the other gods to help. They appear, clash with Adder, but quickly retreat after realizing how few followers Mitama has. Adder's attack hits Mitama, wounding her but not ending her, while Adder herself is injured but still standing. Yukito tells the villagers to stay inside, but Klen, Aluril, Shilleril, and Roy rush in to defend Mitama. Adder prepares her final move to wipe out the entire camp, and Yukito feels hopeless and braces for death. But just before the budget spirit bomb lands, time freezes. Adder senses something is wrong and realizes that it's all an illusion. Klen steps forward and reveals her true identity, that she is Loki. Everyone is stunned to know that Loki, the central anchor, has been living among them the whole time. Adder attempts to strike, but Loki teleports behind Yukito, and with a calm voice, she announces that the time has come to annihilate the Empire. Adder is overwhelmed by the betrayal and tries to strike Loki, but Loki attacks first. Adder collapses in pain, only to learn that her injury is a fake, just an illusion, but sees that she's now restrained. Loki then transports Yukito and the others to the Imperial Palace. As they walk through it, Yukito senses danger, and the entire place is under heavy guard. Loki guides them to the audience chamber, where Adder rushes to the Emperor and apologizes for failing her mission. But the Emperor is unfazed. Instead, he praises both Loki and Adder, already aware of Yukito's identity and his mission, to create a new religion and a god people can believe in. The Emperor begins to talk about the idea of God, explaining how wars have always followed him, and Yukito is stunned. Until now, he believed he was the only person reborn from another world, but the Emperor seems to know far more than expected. As Yukito tries to process this, Mitama suddenly bursts through the palace. She's acting erratically and destroys a pillar, drawing everyone's attention. She explains she's testing for outside influence, because both Yukito and Adder have been speaking to someone who's already dead. Everyone is caught off guard, including Adder. Loki, however, is impressed by how quickly Mitama sees through the illusion, and that the Emperor has been dead for ages, and the only thing left of him is this preserved room. She mentions that he once had mysterious devices called machines, though she never understood how they worked. Yukito examines the room and slowly pieces things together that the machines and technology around him are from a world far more advanced than his own past life. As he watches Mitama touch an electrical socket and gets shocked, Loki says she always wondered how old the world really is, guessing it must be from ages ago. Mitama laughs and reveals the truth that the world is several thousand years old. It was once destroyed, its civilization wiped out, until a group of survivors rebuilt it. They designed it to never fall again, deleting all belief in God and replacing faith with science. Yukito stands frozen, and he starts to understand where he truly is. When he asks Mitama, she confirms that this is Earth. Mitama explains she looked into the future and found a time when belief in God no longer existed. She brought Yukito here because in his past life, he wished for a world without gods. She smiles, proud that she found the world he dreamed of. But Yukito and Adder are still stunned. Loki steps forward and asks Mitama if she wants to help destroy the machines in the room, which is her plan to take down the Empire. Adder reminds her that they are archons made to serve the Empire, but Loki questions the point of serving a ruler who's already dead. To Yukito, the destruction of the Empire would mean freedom and no more fear of Imperial attacks on his village. Mitama agrees to help destroy anything that threatens Yukito, and just then, Yukito suddenly attacks Loki. She dodges, and the two begin to fight. He eventually brings her down, realizing that she can't use her Archon powers inside the palace. He questions her real goal, and that if all she wanted was to reveal the truth, she didn't need to bring them this far. Cornered, Loki admits she wants to destroy the Empire. But Yukito doesn't trust her answer and cuts her with a knife, demanding honesty. Loki finally confesses that long before Yukito's arrival, she saw how terrible the world had become, where people lived under a strange death ritual, treated worse than insects. One day, she chased a bug and watched it escape her, and that moment made her realize that humans no longer had the freedom to even run. Tired of a world ruled by machines, she looked into one and discovered ancient data about past civilizations. She saw that people used to live with free will, worship the gods, and name them. She became fascinated and started questioning her purpose. That's when she disguised herself as Klen and infiltrated the isolation camp, as life there felt more real than her duties as an Archon. She continued her mission in secret, believing the villagers would soon undergo the same strange death ritual. But then Yukito appeared, and right away, she noticed he was different. He spoke about ideas no one else understood, and when he mentioned God, she paid close attention and chose to stay longer. Later, when Aluril and Shiluril were about to undergo the ritual, she witnessed something unbelievable, a god descending from the sky. When Yukito struggled to write doctrine, everyone gave bad advice, except for her. She suggested that followers of Mitama should live freely. Yukito liked the idea and praised her, and slowly, she started to admire him. Eventually, Mitama confronted her and immediately saw through her disguise, even identifying her as female. That moment convinced Loki that Mitama was a real god, one she couldn't fool, and it fueled her decision to destroy the Empire. While undercover, Loki began experimenting, gathering followers, and learning she could use her powers even without machines. Yukito is shocked by this, as it means it's possible to create a false god. Loki tells Adder that she has already contacted the other Archons, offering them the chance to become new gods. Then, she turns to Yukito, inviting him to help destroy the Empire and rise as a god beside her. Adder objects, but Yukito releases Loki and claims he'll join her. He turns to Mitama and tells her to destroy the Empire. Mitama obeys and, using her powers, she summons a massive tree that bursts through the heart of the Imperial Palace. As Loki prepares to leave with him, Yukito turns to her and says that he will only ever follow one god, Mitama, because no false god, no matter how powerful, can defeat a true one. Meanwhile, from a distance, Dakini watches it all, burning with a desire for revenge. Then, back in Yukito's village, people gather at the restaurant to celebrate their freedom from the Empire's deadly rituals. Yukito isn't happy seeing Loki celebrating with them and confronts her. Loki says this is her last day here, and she just wants one final drink with her friends, claiming she has no hidden plans. Roy walks in, surprised to discover Loki is a woman with large assets. He tries to touch them, but it turns out to be an illusion, and he's actually touching Ricky. Loki laughs it off and says her time with them is over. She tells Yukito that he now has the power to defeat the Archons, and as long as he stays in the village, its people will remain safe. Mitama confidently announces she'll crush any enemy from Archons to false gods. Yukito reminds her that she already lost to Adder, and Mitama shrugs it off, saying it was her day off. Loki prepares to leave and tells them they can now do as they please with Adder, and with the Emperor machine destroyed, Adder no longer has a purpose. Yukito promises to protect the village and stop Loki if she becomes a threat. Loki welcomes the challenge and makes a vow of her own that she'll do whatever it takes to become a true god. Outside, Bertrand confronts Loki, and she says he won't let her go like Yukito did, as she has what it takes to defeat her. Loki laughs and transforms Bertrand back into a man, making him overjoyed. But she quickly turns him back into a girl, leaving him crushed again. She says her powers still work, unlike Adder's, and mocks her inability to stop her. She declares she's going to the Imperial capital. Bertrand insists on tagging along, determined to stop her from causing harm. Loki, unfazed, tells her to do whatever he wants. Back in the restaurant, Adder sits quietly, feeling powerless and defeated. Aluril approaches with a bowl of ice cream made by Yukito, hoping to cheer her up. Shiluril mentions she's closing the restaurant and tells Yukito that Adder reminds her of Mitama, asking him to take care of her. Yukito talks to Adder, who weeps over the loss of her empire, saying that crying won't bring it back, which upsets her. She blames him for destroying her world, and Yukito calmly says he did what was needed to save lives and that hope still exists. He offers to help her destroy the remaining anchors so she can build her own system. And since Loki's powers are similar, he believes Adder could revive the Empire if she tries. Adder asks why he would help her, and Yukito says it's because they share the same goal, to eliminate the anchors, and maybe also because he can't bear to see a girl cry. Adder hugs him, not realizing he's manipulating her. He gets her a fresh ice cream, as the first one melted, and feeds it to her. She cries again, overwhelmed by how delicious it is, and Aluril watches in disbelief, realizing Yukito might be a small melon lover. The next day, Yukito tells the villagers they now have two gods, Mitama and Adder. Mitama is furious that he's dividing her followers, and Yukito encourages Adder to try her powers. She focuses and makes a rock explode, surprising even herself. Yukito realizes Adder is more powerful than Mitama, as her abilities are military grade. Later, Yukito and Mitama rescue a villager from a monster, and Mitama easily defeats it, shocking the onlookers. Yukito takes this chance to show off his village, and the visitors are amazed to see people eating, drinking, and living happily. He offers them the same life if they fully convert to Mitama's religion. The next day, Mitama gains thousands of new followers. But to her shock, Adder gains even more, and Adder boasts she beat the beast, while Mitama only provides food and supplies. Since supplies are sufficient, Yukito shifts focus to finding Bertrand and gathering information on the remaining Archons. Shilleril leads the intel operation and tells Yukito about Dakini, a self-proclaimed god who's gaining followers through the power of love. Both Mitama and Adder want to destroy Dakini's religion, but Yukito has another idea, which is to convert Dakini's followers from within. Since her power comes from love, Yukito believes she gathers followers through reproduction. Roy and Alluril both get nosebleeds just thinking about it. Yukito brings them to Dakini's village, but quickly realizes he might have chosen the two people most vulnerable to her influence. As they are near the village, they're stopped by Rishu, who escorts them in after they claim to be joining Dakini's religion. Rishu turns out to be a high-ranking member, and rumors say she can make someone bust their caps just by looking at them. She gives a motivational talk about tentacles, which deeply moves Roy and Alluril. Rishu leads them to the ceremonial room where Dakini will appear, and since it's a room for couples, Yukito goes in with Alluril, leaving Roy with Mitama. Inside, Yukito tells Alluril that Dakini is an evil deity known for eating people in his world. Suddenly, Dakini arrives, flashy and stunning, and Yukito is speechless. She quickly snaps a photo of them, automatically registering them into her religion, then leaves. Yukito's heart pounds, his body warms up, and they're already under her influence without even drinking or eating anything. Alluril, overcome by the effects, hugs Yukito and begins taking off her plot armors, begging him to expand her creamy domain with her. But Yukito manages to escape, thanks to the rigorous training from his father. Roy crashes into the room, kicked in by an enraged Mitama. She explains Roy tried to bump uglies with her under the influence. The village girls turn against Roy, and he runs off. In the chaos, Alluril is hit by a flying rock and collapses. While Yukito and Mitama clean up the mess, Rishu receives orders from Dakini to enter berserk mode. She enters the room just as Mitama finishes fixing the wall, and Yukito warns Rishu to forget what she saw or face spicy consequences. Lost in fantasy, Rishu finishes just from the thought alone, and they tie her up. Rishu confesses she's never had bump bellies before and wonders why Yukito, Mitama, and Alluril aren't affected by Dakini's powers. Yukito explains that he has intense training, and Mitama is a real god. Rishu becomes intrigued, as Dakini claims to be a god too, but now she's unsure, so she begs Yukito to help destroy Dakini's religion. Meanwhile, Bertrand and Loki arrive at the imperial capital and find that the city hasn't changed much since the fall of the empire. But Loki points out that Bertrand isn't really looking at the bodies of the sick and the dead lying abandoned, and no one has repaired the broken buildings, as the assembly once responsible for dealing with health, death, and infrastructure is gone. Loki explains that the capital is slowly rotting, and she sees this as a chance to act, and while her intentions aren't evil, she feels the pressure to move quickly before the others surpass her. She reveals that more anchors, twisted like herself, exist, and one even possesses the power of love. It's not something to underestimate, but she believes she's destined to rule over all anchors and become a god. Meanwhile, in Dakini's village, Roy, stripped of his clothes, tries to flee but is quickly caught by the guards. Dakini looks at him with disgust, but suddenly gets an idea involving him. Elsewhere, Rishu explains to Yukito, Mitama, and Alluril that her isolation camp has been converted into a center for Dakini's religion. In the past, Rishu enjoyed buying and reading books about reproduction, and this habit ended up pushing her into Dakini's cult, where people assume she's a master of gobbling glizzies due to her knowledge. She then rises to the rank of officer, while she's constantly surrounded by degenerates and doesn't enjoy it. After hearing Rishu's story, Yukito hesitates, as he considers it a gamble, but having Rishu, an officer in Dakini's sect, on their side could be a huge advantage, so he decides to accept her. Because Rishu loves reproduction-themed books, Alluril quickly bonds with her and understands her interests. Suddenly, Mitama announces that she's losing followers. Meanwhile, Adder and the others are out hunting the horn of a mysterious beast. Adder gathers a crowd and urges them to lend her their strength to bring the beast down. She fires a powerful blast that stuns everyone, and watching the aftermath, Adder realizes her powers are growing stronger. Back in Dakini's village, Rishu introduces Yukito, Alluril, and Mitama to her fellow sect members. and they immediately become infatuated with Rishu because of her reputation. Rishu brushes off the attention and starts the session, while Allurl enjoys the attention too, which Yukito finds odd. He also notices Roy's absence but keeps his thoughts to himself. Rishu informs him that Dakini is away visiting another facility and will return in a few days, and Yukito is pleased to hear this. He wants to ask Mitama for a favor, but she's weakened from the massive loss of followers. He explains to Allurl that in his world, if a great leader vanishes even briefly, people lose faith and shift their loyalty. He didn't expect Mitama's influence to fade so fast, so he urges them to complete their preparations before Mitama loses all her strength. Then, Yukito's faith in her revives her spirits and helps her recover, and he asks Mitama for help, and soon a bright flash of light bursts from their room, visible even from outside. Meanwhile, Dakini hosts her usual ritualistic party while her followers shower her with praise. She gives a speech, but notices that although her number of followers keeps growing, her power doesn't. She hears laughter behind her and turns to find someone claiming they've created a new tool for the religion, based on teachings from Rishu, who is currently holding a session. Yukito has ordered Mitama to give Rishu provocative material from his world, which she now uses under the lie that it honors Dakini. As Rishu's popularity rises, Dakini grows uneasy and heads to Rishu's branch herself. When she arrives, Dakini accuses Rishu of plotting against her, and her people beg her to show mercy, believing Rishu is only trying to help them understand Dakini better. Dakini suspects there's a mastermind behind Rishu's sudden rise, and she thinks of Yukito, Mitama, and Allurl, who recently joined the village. She immediately orders their arrest, and Roy, disguised as one of Dakini's guards, steps forward, injures Yukito, and declares his loyalty to Dakini. She rewards Roy by letting him use his right arm for spicy purposes, which drives him deeper into obsession. Dakini drags her prisoners out for a heresy trial, and Roy attacks Yukito and plays with Allurl, trying to touch them until Dakini stops him. During the trial, Dakini questions Rishu about organizing an unauthorized session, and Rishu is overwhelmed when her followers begin lying to save themselves. Just as Dakini is about to execute someone, Rishu collapses in tears and begs for punishment, saying all she wants is to be worthy of Dakini's love. Her words move the crowd, and they plead for her life, while Yukito is grinning, as everything is going according to plan. Dakini is stunned to see her people siding with Rishu, who now appears noble in their eyes. Hours before the trial, Yukito had trained Rishu to act the part of a strong leader, suspecting that Dakini would either try to manipulate or eliminate her. During training, Rishu fantasizes about Yukito dominating her and finishes by herself while he watches. He later commends her performance and hugs her, proud of her acting. Back in her cell, Rishu delivers a speech that touches everyone's hearts, and Dakini starts to lose her grip on her followers as they begin to betray her. Yukito urges her to release them, warning that holding them captive will only divide the people. Realizing Yukito is behind everything, Dakini remembers Loki's warning about him. Still, she doesn't back down, and instead of freeing them, she sends them to a deeper prison. Inside the cell, Mitama calls Roy a traitor, but he snaps and blames her for never accepting his love. Trying to act composed, he tells Yukito that they used to be friends, but Dakini gave him the support Yukito never did.
Really?
Then he walks away, and Rishu and Allurl laugh at his dramatic exit, mocking the idea that someone like Roy could love Mitama or act cool. Yukito tries to come up with a way to escape, but he needs a specific tool and looks to Mitama, who's still too weak. Suddenly, the prison begins to tremble as Dakini's elite bodyguards, the Purgers, are approaching. Allurl panics, and Rishu warns everyone that these guards have been around since the founding of Dakini's religion, who are designed to eliminate threats. As she explains, one of the Purgers rips open the prison cell door with his bare hand, and Yukito immediately steps forward, ready to protect the others from the looming danger. Ages ago, when Dakini was created by the Emperor, she felt thrilled, believing her purpose was to help people reproduce and raise the birth rate. But instead, the Emperor commands her to do the exact opposite, as he wants his world to remain wild and unchanging. This causes Dakini to grow bitter toward him, and for thousands of years, she devoted herself to stopping reproduction, making people infertile. Over time, she grows disheartened, watching as people lose interest in love and give in to shallow lust. Eventually, she writes a book about reproduction in secret, and at first, no one understands it. The embassy bans the book, labeling it forbidden, but it continues to circulate underground. One day, Dakini spots a girl reading her book. When she approaches, the girl becomes nervous and afraid. But Dakini is surprised, as the girl shows genuine love in her heart. Her name is Toka, and they begin spending time together, and through their growing bond, Dakini starts to believe in people like her. Toka lives according to love and instinct, which inspires Dakini to believe humans should live that way again. However, Toka's ideals are rejected by the capital's people, and because of her beliefs, they exile her to an isolation camp. Later, Dakini visits the camp and finds out Toka has died. Her body lies abandoned in the street after she tries to make love and gives birth to a child. In the capital, strict population control prevents childbirth, so the baby and parents are viewed as monsters. Heartbroken, Dakini makes a vow to restore the world to what it once was, a place where families and love thrive. Back in the prison cell, Dakini's purgers attempt to end Yukido and the others, but Adder intervenes. She defeats the purgers with ease, something Mitama takes notice of, as Adder now has more followers than she does. As they attempt to escape, Rishu bumps into a purger and drops many of her belongings. When she tries to retrieve one of her books, the purgers attack her, but Allurl saves her by attaching Rishu's private toys to the purger's face. As the group escapes, Mitama begins questioning how Adder gained such a strong following. Yukido explains that after Mitama left their village with him, the villagers switched their faith to Adder, who stayed behind to protect them. This was part of Yukido's strategy to claim Dakini's followers and focus their devotion on a single person. When the group reaches the first floor, they come face to face with Dakini. She finds Yukido impressive, having heard stories about him from Loki. But when she sees Rishu holding Toka's book, she freezes. Adder quickly attacks, knocking her down. Yukido announces that phase 2 of the plan is starting, and Rishu grabs Mitama to run. Adder tells Dakini she must pay for betraying both the Emperor and the embassy, and Dakini realizes she is finally meeting Adder, the one Loki spoke about. Curious, she tries to charm Adder using her love powers, but Adder destroys Dakini's phone, stopping her in her tracks. Adder says she won't end Dakini, so she can't launch another plot against them. Furious, Dakini laughs at her, calling her naive for being born in the Empire's final days, too late to understand anything. She then reveals her true strength and her enormous number of followers, which shocks everyone. Rishu brings Mitama to safety, understanding that Yukido's last hope depends on her. Hearing Yukido's belief in her reignites Mitama's resolve, and Rishu explains Yukido's plan and questions how Dakini knows her mother, Toka. Meanwhile, Dakini unleashes her love power to poison Yukido and the girls. Glowing emblems appear on their stomachs, and intense heat starts to burn inside them. She tries to break their will using teasing and temptation, and the poison overwhelms them with wild lust, weakening their resistance. Yukido struggles to hold on, but Allurl and Shilurl lose control and attack him. He collapses, overwhelmed, as Adder, Allurl, and Shilurl begin behaving like Mia Khalifa at her prime toward him while Dakini watches. At that moment, Mitama arrives with her plant creatures. She declares herself the true god, but Dakini laughs, thinking she's just another Archon with big talk. Mitama tries to defend herself, but Rishu steps in and announces she is severing ties with Dakini. The others follow, drawn to Mitama's stronger conviction. And in that moment, Yukido's plan works, as Dakini's followers begin converting to Mitama after Rishu gives an emotional speech. Though Dakini tries to stay confident, she feels her power weakening. Mitama uses her own strength to break Dakini's spell, freeing Yukido and the girls. Dakini soon loses her powers completely, and Mitama then tells her she's not a true god and reveals that she knows the real Dakini, the original goddess of love. Mitama searches for the real Dakini and pleads with her to strip the fake one of her power to save Yukido. Amused by Mitama's desperation, the real Dakini eventually agrees out of pity, and she causes the fake Dakini to lose her powers entirely. The fake Dakini tries to attack Mitama in a last-ditch effort, but Adder stops her, proving she's no longer poisoned. Terrified, Dakini attempts to flee, but as she bolts toward the exit, she sees Roy standing in her way. Thinking she can slip past him, she makes a move, but Roy grabs her and holds her tightly. He tickles her and touches her plots, making her uncomfortable. With Dakini restrained, Adder strikes her down. Roy then explains that Yukido gave him a note saying Mitama might fall for him if he helped. Mitama does not return the sentiment, but with Roy's help, they defeat Dakini. Still confused, Dakini demands to know how they won despite her larger number of followers. Yukido stands over her and says that even the weak have paths to victory. As Dakini keeps mocking them, claiming she just wanted to make the world better, Rishu steps forward. Dakini smirks and says she has plans for her, boasting that she took Rishu from the same isolation camp as Toka. But Rishu then reveals the truth that she is Toka's daughter. Dakini freezes. She remembers how Toka once wished for a baby, dreamed of happiness, and wanted her child to become friends with Dakini. Emotion floods Dakini's heart, and she sees Toka in Rishu's eyes and falls apart. Crawling toward her, Dakini weeps uncontrollably, filled with grief and longing for the girl she once loved. Mitama strips and restrains Dakini before locking her in a prison cell. Dakini, trying to manipulate the situation, attempts to seduce them by suggesting they can do freaky things to her. Roy loses control and lunges toward her, but Allurl stops him, realizing he's about to betray their cause. Yukido tells Dakini he wants her to command her followers to convert to Mitama's faith, but Dakini refuses, angering Mitama. Yukido gives her some time to reconsider, warning that if she doesn't cooperate, they'll have no choice but to eliminate her. The group tries to come up with a plan to persuade Dakini to change her mind, and they consider using someone who can emotionally influence her, someone close to her. This leads them to Rishu, who is familiar with Dakini, and Rishu claims she has a brilliant plan. Rishu ties Yukido up and starts training him to act like a pig. She's determined to make his performance convincing, so Allurl and Shilurl join in and begin punishing him as part of the roleplay. Meanwhile, in her cell, Dakini thinks that if they end her, her followers will never convert, and oddly, that gives her a sense of peace. Suddenly, Rishu enters the prison and starts asking Dakini about her relationship with her mother, Toka. Dakini says they were best friends and that Toka inspired her to try changing the world. Hearing this, Rishu gives her a coat to cover herself and says she'll be set free. Rishu briefly steps outside and pretends to beat Yukido, who is now naked and wearing a leash. She drags him into the cell and punishes him for failing in his role. Then, Rishu humiliates Yukido further by forcing him to play until he finishes in front of Dakini. Despite the shock, Dakini becomes deeply impressed by Rishu and starts to trust her. Rishu tells Dakini to order her followers to obey Rishu, claiming it's the only way to protect Dakini. Moved by Rishu's commitment, Dakini agrees. Without fully realizing it, Dakini begins guiding her followers into Mitama's religion. Once the plan succeeds, Yukido and the others head home, and on the road, Yukido says he never wants to think about his performance again. Shilurl and Allurl praise his acting and hint they'd be willing to do more, but Yukido doesn't respond, lost in his own thoughts. He wonders if Dakini saw through the act and only played along out of loyalty to Rishu. He also notes how he can understand the other Archons better than Mitama. As they approach the village, Mitama proudly shows Adder how many followers she has gained. Suddenly, a strange beast appears. Confident with her 10,000 followers, Mitama prepares to defeat it. But Adder steps in and blasts the creature first, taking the glory and infuriating Mitama. They argue, with Adder boasting about her own growing strength and her dream to rebuild the empire. More beasts suddenly attack, and the group panics. Adder fights back and defeats many, but they're soon surrounded. Their vehicle is destroyed, but Mitama uses her power to create a plant barrier that protects everyone. They survive, but now realize the beasts are heading toward the village. When they finally reach the village, they find it in ruins. They assume the villagers are lost until Ricky appears and reveals that everyone hid on Shilurl's advice. Looking at the destruction, Yukido begs Mitama to restore the village, but she refuses, afraid of facing her own weakness and the pain of failure. But Adder and the others begin pleading with her, and overwhelmed by their desperation, Mitama gives in and rebuilds the entire village using her divine power. Meanwhile, the villagers rush to Allurl's restaurant to drink and celebrate. Inside, Shilurl splashes Yukido and scolds him for begging, but Yukido insists he did it for the good of their religion. As he reflects on the village's vulnerabilities, Ricky rushes in, warning them that a strange beast is chasing Roy. Meanwhile, Roy had rescued a girl in the woods and is now being chased by a beast. Adder arrives and eliminates it, and the girl, Gaia, is unconscious. Roy tries to undress her to check her pulse, but she hits him. Pretending to be in need, she gets Adder to examine her. Suddenly, Gaia kisses Adder, leaving everyone stunned. She then introduces herself as one of the major Archons who can control the strange beasts. She asks who the leader is, and Yukido immediately tackles her, blaming her for the destruction. Gaia begs him not to end her, saying it was all a mistake, and Yukido lets her go. They bring Gaia to the restaurant, where she bonds with Mitama, and Gaia admits she only has 2 followers, which weakens her control over the beasts. She says she wants to destroy Loki, the one behind the current chaos, and vows to eliminate all other Archons, as a few days earlier, Gaia visited the capital and saw Loki's plan in motion. The next day, Isekai'd, Gaia, and the group travel to the capital and find a massive wall surrounding it. Mitama tries to tear it down, but Gaia stops her and shows off her power by summoning a flying beast. The beast attempts to reach the top of the wall, but Loki's automated defenses destroy it, and Isekai'd realizes that Loki has been preparing for this moment. Suddenly, Bertrand lands in front of them, calling himself the Dark Knight, only to immediately trip over a rock. Allurl sends him back to the village, but Isekai'd takes his sword. Then, Loki appears beside Isekai'd, prompting him to strike, but it's just a projection. Loki mocks Isekai'd for teaming up with outcasts, and Mitama boasts about her follower count, but Loki confidently says he has 1,000,000. Isekai'd counters that having only a few loyal followers is more impressive, shocking everyone. Loki is caught off guard by Isekai'd's fearless attitude, and he tells her that if she had attacked their village, she'd already be gone. The group returns home with Bertrand, and at Allurl's restaurant, Isekai'd admits he was bluffing and finds Loki impressive. Bertrand shares what he learned while inside the capital, where the people have changed, and Loki has taken complete control. She has absorbed the former emperor's followers and now rules as the new sovereign. Realizing this, Isekai'd understands they are now locked in a battle of psychological warfare, so he comes up with a bold new idea to make Mitama the producer of the next generation song Princess. From a distance, Isekai'd now sees himself as a producer, and he announces his new plan to gain more followers for Mitama's religion by becoming a music producer. While Mitama expects to be the lead singer, Isekai'd quickly shuts that idea down, as he considers putting her in the spotlight, a mistake he won't repeat. Hoping to form a band, he asks the girls if they have any experience with music. But they don't, since music had been completely erased by the Emperor. Isekai'd once talked about music with Roy, who has a basic understanding, but that's it. So, Isekai'd decides to reintroduce music to the world. He gives the girls musical instruments and starts training them. Slowly, music begins to affect the rhythm of everyday life. But as others get more attention, Mitama grows jealous. She supplied the instruments, yet she's not the center of it all. One day, Bertrand strums a single guitar note so loudly it disrupts everything. The noise is unbearable, so much that Mitama's ears start to bleed, and Isekai'd tries to stop it, but Bertrand keeps playing. Eventually, Mitama steps in and shuts everything down, telling Bertrand he's not meant for music. Bertrand cries and begs Isekai'd not to remove him from the band, but Isekai'd stays indifferent. With Bertrand out, Isekai'd selects Allurl, Shilurl, Gaia, and Adder to form the official band representing Mitama's religion. A few days later, they perform in front of a crowd, and as the band plays, Isekai'd and Mitama watch from a distance. Mitama, though bitter about not being the star, suddenly senses an increase in her power. But her follower count hasn't changed, and Isekai'd recalls how Mitama's power once spiked dramatically after gaining her first believers. He realizes Allurl and Shilurl might carry something unique within them that enhances her strength. He explains to Mitama that a god's power isn't only about numbers, but it also depends on connection. Their group, being built on mutual exchange, lacks true unity, but music has the ability to strengthen emotional bonds, making followers feel more connected. Isekai'd concludes that this is why the Emperor erased music, knowing its deep link to ancient religion and its ability to empower belief. Mitama, feeling energized, wants to go after Loki immediately, but Isekai'd stops her as they must deal with someone else first. Later, Isekai'd mocks Bertrand, pointing out that she can't sing, dance, or fight. Bertrand panics, assuming she's being kicked out, but when Isekai'd asks what she can do, Bertrand pledges to do anything for the village, as she just doesn't want to be left behind. Isekai'd smiles and gives her a new job to spy on Gaia and report her activities. Bertrand happily accepts and sneaks into the car Gaia takes. She follows Gaia to another branch of their community. When Gaia meets a group of kids, Bertrand hides, thinking something is off. Before she can act, Gaia collapses in front of the children, pretending to be sick. The kids rush to help her, and Gaia invites them to her home. They refuse, having been taught to stay away from strangers. Bertrand then tails Gaia into the forest, where she sees a wild beast attacking a child, and Gaia steps in and calms the beast before Bertrand can react. Though the child runs away, the beast bites Gaia's arm. She speaks softly to it, saying it didn't need to go that far since there are so few children around. With her power, she sends it away, nearly spotting Bertrand in the process. Bertrand trails Gaia to a secluded house and peeks inside, and she's shocked to see many children calling Gaia mother. That's enough for her, and she returns and tells Yukido everything over a meal. Yukido realizes that Gaia has her own followers, structured like a family. He knows from experience that faith built on family ties is powerful, stronger than strategic loyalty. So, rather than destroy her outright, he decides to learn more and take her down with Mitama's help. Grateful for Bertrand's help, Yukido praises her, and Bertrand blushes, overwhelmed with emotion. The next day, Yukido arranges to meet someone in secret. But Bertrand suddenly ambushes him, ties him up, and pulls down his pants. She confesses that she can't resist anymore, even though she was originally a man who turned into a woman. Yukido panics, realizing that Dakini is behind this. He shouts for Dakini to appear, and she does. Bertrand, now in a frenzy, leaps onto Yukido. Rishu arrives in time and spanks Dakini, forcing her to stop. Dakini obeys, snapping Bertrand out of it. Covering herself in shame, Bertrand runs off in tears, and Dakini scolds her, urging her to accept her identity. Yukido, feeling attacked, reminds Dakini that he called her there in the first place. She teases him, then suddenly breaks into dance, surprising everyone. Rishu explains that music has become popular among the people ever since Yukido reintroduced it, and Yukido realizes that Dakini's dancing is simply her enjoying the music. Then he shares his real reason for calling them, that he needs Dakini's help. Gaia is using children to grow stronger, and Yukido wants Dakini to win the children over instead. He opens up about his own difficult childhood, raised by a father who treated him as a tool. Dakini is touched but insists her agreement isn't for Yukido, but it's for the children. She feels responsible for them and agrees to help. Later, Gaia heads to a nearby lake while the children gather water. There, they encounter Dakini, who offers to teach them something fun. Back at Yukido's village, band training continues. Meanwhile, Gaia starts to feel anxious about the kids. Dakini spends time with them, choosing not to use her powers because she's afraid. They play by the river, laughing and splashing, and the noise draws the attention of Cyan and Kai. When they see their siblings playing with a stranger, they confront Dakini and warn her to leave, quoting Gaia's teachings. The other kids ask them to join in, but Dakini questions whether they were ever given a choice to be part of Gaia's family. Cyan and Kai coldly say she doesn't understand what a true family is. Dakini senses something unusual about them, something different from the others. Just then, monsters attack, and Dakini watches, stunned, as Cyan and Kai step forward, not to run, but to protect the children. She begins to suspect the impossible that Cyan and Kai might actually be the ones controlling the beasts. Dakini runs through the forest with the children as monstrous beasts pursue them. The kids are angry, knowing that Cyan and Kai are using Gaia's power against them. Dakini blames Yukido for stealing her followers, which leaves her unable to protect the children like she used to. Meanwhile, Cyan and Kai chase from behind, determined to destroy anyone who threatens their newfound family. Before Cyan and Kai meet Gaia, they live with artificial parents, synthetic creations assigned to them by the assembly. At first, Cyan feels happy to have parents, but over time, she realizes they are emotionless, just following orders. One day during lunch, the assembly invades their home and commands her father to perform a ritual, and he complies without hesitation. When Cyan tries to stop them from ending him, he tells them to take her to the isolation camp. On the way there, she meets Kai in the car, and he tries to connect, but Cyan is overwhelmed with betrayal and keeps her distance. Suddenly, their vehicle is attacked by a monstrous beast, and the crash takes everyone's lives except Cyan and Kai. Gaia appears, moved by pity, and gives Cyan a first aid kit, unable to ignore an injured child. For the first time, Cyan feels comfort, and being treated with kindness by Gaia. She starts to see her as a true mother and dreams of creating a big family of her own. Now, Cyan and Kai continue their pursuit of Dakini and the kids. One of Gaia's beasts suddenly falls, eliminated before their eyes. Yukido, Mitama, and Adder arrive just in time to rescue Dakini and the children. Adder defeats the beast easily, catching Dakini's attention. Yukido faces Cyan and Kai, disappointed that Dakini failed to win them over, as he had expected it to be simple. The ground begins to tremble, and Mitama urges everyone to run. Gaia appears, amused that Yukido distracted her with a band performance while he stole her followers. He warns her not to try that again, and that if she gathers more, he will take them too. Gaia laughs, mocking Yukido's hopes for his village, and declares that she will end everything today. She summons her most powerful creation, the Typhon. Yukido freezes at the sight of the unnatural beast, while Cyan and Kai run into Gaia's arms, grateful for her past kindness. She praises them for staying loyal and not betraying her to Yukido. Her words give Cyan a moment of peace, but then her tone changes. She betrays them, drowning them in mud. They cry out for help, calling her family, but she coldly denies ever knowing what family means. Cyan weeps as Gaia ends their bond without hesitation. Gaia watches proudly as Typhon, more powerful than even the Archons, prepares to attack. Adder blasts the beast, but it has no effect, and Typhon retaliates. Mitama raises a barrier of vines to protect them, but they're trapped. Desperate, Yukido bows to Typhon, mistaking it for a god. Mitama quickly warns him that it's not like Dakini, as Typhon is an ancient, mindless beast born from Earth itself, and it has no understanding of anything. Out of nowhere, Allural and Shillerl arrive in a speeding car, and Allural urges everyone to jump in. As she drives, Shillerl hits random buttons, activating nitros and launching them forward. Impressed, Shillerl praises her driving. Allural says it's all thanks to her sister, who rides beside her, and they narrowly escape Typhon, for now. Adder and Yukido question what that creature really is, and Yuushi explains that it's Typhon, Gaia's strongest weapon that doesn't need followers to control it, and it obeys her perfectly. Yuushi learned about Typhon from an ancient book Gaia once gave him, written by a lost civilization. Yukido feels uneasy, not just because Gaia has such knowledge, but because Yuushi now understands a world filled with hyper-advanced technology, something Yukido struggles to imagine. A realization hits him that Earth's gods might be connected to this lost civilization. Yukido turns to Yuushi, asking for help, but before he can respond, Typhon erupts from the ground again, attacking them. A smaller part of Typhon chases them, but then its full size is revealed. The children almost fall out of the car, but Yukido grabs them just in time. He sacrifices himself, falling out instead, and is immediately pierced by Typhon. Mitama jumps out to rescue him, but both are struck down. Yukido and Mitama are dead, and the group watches in horror. Inside Typhon, Yukido wakes up. He finds Mitama, Cyan, and Kai, all weak and injured. Gaia appears in her combat form.
Damn!
And she tells Yukido that he cannot die, not even if eaten and torn in half. She says Mitama must have used all her power to bless or curse him with immortality. Now stripped and vulnerable, Yukido finds Gaia trying to seduce him, but his eyes shift toward the distance, at Typhon, who is heading for the capital. Back at the village, silence fills the air. Everyone mourns Yukido and Mitama, but Allural refuses to believe they're dead, as Mitama is a god, after all. Suddenly, Allural's necklace, gifted to her by Yukido, glows. A message from Mitama is hidden inside, but no one can read it. Yuushi uses his ancient book to decode it, and the message reveals the truth that Yukido, Cyan, Kai, and Gaia are still alive inside Typhon. Allural decides they must save them, and everyone agrees, as Yukido and Mitama always protected them, and now it's their turn. Inside Typhon, Gaia prepares for the final destruction. She vows to erase the capital, and Loki along with it. She asks Yukido if he remembers a world ruled by science, and then she shares the truth. Archons are part human, part biological weapon. They were created before the Empire to control humanity, and Gaia says she was born in an age ruled by machines, where some humans still lived peacefully with nature. Her mother led one such community and named Gaia their god, but they only exploited her. Filled with rage, Gaia eventually ended her mother and the rest, and the government captured her and turned her into an Archon. She claims that most Archons have similar origins, and it's in their blood. Gaia accuses Yukido of being no different from her mother, controlling, manipulative, and selfish, and she believes that's how Yukido built his group so fast. Yukido denies this, as in his past life, he had no friends, no real relationships. Manipulation was the only way he knew to connect, but now, things are different. He insists that they are alike, both offering comfort, only to discard others when they're no longer needed. Gaia, furious, begins choking him, vowing to destroy everything. She finds his hope for a restored world, one where gods still exist, repulsive. Just then, an alert appears. Yukido's friends are performing a concert in his honor. They're united by everything he's done for them, and even the kids are there, curious about Gaia's true nature. The crowd cheers for the band, and Roy joins in, not because he wants to, but because he's trying to protect Mitama. Bertrand overhears Roy and reminds him that Yukido gave him a place to stay. While strumming her guitar, Adder begins to feel a surge of power, and she hands the guitar to Bertrand so she can take over. Bertrand can't actually play, but she does his best to keep the rhythm steady. Gaining more strength, Adder unleashes a blast that takes out one of the Typhon's heads, sending the audience into a frenzy. She encourages everyone to give it their all. Rishu walks up to Dakini and grabs her, and she urges Dakini to unleash her power to destroy the Typhon and save Yukido and the kids. Dakini becomes excited from Rishu's touch and activates her power. She turns her passion into a weapon and makes the Typhon's heads attack each other. Adder joins in, slicing more heads, impressing everyone with Dakini's strength. The group recalls Yukido's words that when followers are emotionally stirred, their gods grow stronger, and this is why they're performing. They start to believe they can win, but Yuushi senses danger. Suddenly, the Typhon regenerates and begins to lash out at the concert, and they realize Mitama is using her power to stop the Typhon from advancing. Inside the beast, Gaia watches with disinterest, convinced nothing can defeat the Typhon. She tells Mitama to stop using her strength, then confronts Yukido. As Gaia walks toward him, Yukido headbutts her, clearing the fog in his mind. Gaia stumbles back, surprised by his boldness. Mitama reveals her plan to Yukido that for her to gain ultimate power, he must become her follower. Yukido agrees, asking her to sever his old bonds. She uses her power to cut him and urges him to trust her. But Yukido suddenly admits he doesn't remember their last talk, as his mind is still foggy, and he criticizes her for doing nothing when he had asked for help before. He stands up, declaring that he'll take Gaia down and stop her monstrous creation because his friends are fighting for him. Gaia mocks his arrogance, saying it's his greatest weakness. Yukido attacks, but Gaia dodges effortlessly, as she's even more skilled than Loki or Dakini in close combat. Meanwhile, Yuushi notices Mitama's energy fading and remembers Yukido once said he'd lead if anything happened to him. Yuushi calls out for the group to start phase 2. The girls prepare Adder, who hesitates at first, but Shilril bribes her with promises of endless ice cream. Adder grabs the mic and delivers a heartfelt speech, announcing she's stepping down as leader and urging her followers to support Mitama instead. The crowd is unsure until Rishu backs her up, explaining that a real god serves others, and Adder's followers rally behind Mitama. Sensing the boost in support, Mitama easily breaks free from Gaia's control. She declares her loyalty to Yukido, vowing to protect him at all costs. She summons a giant warrior made from plants to battle the Typhon, while Yukido keeps fighting Gaia, who beats and wounds him repeatedly, but thanks to Mitama's curse, he keeps healing. Gaia focuses on ending him again and again to wear down his mind. But then Mitama strikes from behind, piercing Gaia's heart with a plant weapon. Yukido tells Gaia that by focusing only on him, she left herself open to Mitama's attack. Mitama taunts Gaia, calling their conflict a perfect match. Suddenly, the plant giant and the Typhon explode, and the group rushes away and jumps into a car to find Yukido and Mitama. Yukido briefly dies again, but Mitama revives him, and the group spots her holding him and breaks into tears of relief after they feared they had lost him. The children realize Gaia is still alive, and she taunts them, daring them to finish her off for betraying them. Kai steps forward with a dagger, ready to finish her, but Cyan stops him. She begs Kai not to go through with it, while Gaia continues provoking them, saying she's lived too long. She reflects on her past, and Cyan asks how she knows so much about family. Gaia says she doesn't, as she never had one. But Cyan tells her she's different from the parents back in the capital, as Gaia cared for them when they were sick or lost in thought. Through tears, Cyan says Gaia never cared about family, but she forgives her and wants to start over and build a real one. After Gaia and the Typhon are defeated, the village celebrates. Adder introduces ice cream to the kids, joking that it deserves their worship more than Dakini or Gaia, because it tastes better. Cyan talks with Gaia and calls her mother, telling her she'll always see her that way, giving Gaia at least one loyal follower. Yukido soon confronts Gaia and tells her that her children are now in custody. Gaia claims she could still make Kai follow her, but Yukido tells her that's no longer possible. Before the celebration begins, Yukido and Kai speak in private. Yukido struggles with what to do about Kai, as he knows Kai loves Cyan, which is why he joined Gaia's side. Yukido suggests Kai stay close to Gaia to keep an eye on her for Cyan's sake, and Kai agrees. Mitama shows up to taunt Gaia, flaunting her growing number of followers. Yukido notices that even with Adder's supporters added in, Mitama now far surpasses them all. Suddenly, Loki appears to face Yukito. She reveals she was the one helping Mitama by empowering her, since the typhon had been threatening the capital. Yukito calls her out for playing God and warns that her downfall is already in motion. Loki doesn't back down, and she tells him she'll be waiting when he returns to the capital, then vanishes. Yukito walks to the river, where Allural and Shillural find him. They scold him for disappearing during the party, but Yukito thanks them, as before meeting them, he had no friends. Now that he has people who care for him, he swears to protect them no matter what. His friends say they've got plenty of ideas for the future, which makes him smile, and the night ends with everyone vowing to party till morning, with Yukito at the center of it all. Later, Mitama crawls back to Yukito and begs him again to become her follower. He still refuses and watches his friends laugh together. But even though the world is cruel, he realizes there's something worth cherishing, and he understands that his people don't need a god. Mitama watches Yukito and his friends laugh in Loki's world, and Loki quietly smiles. If you watch this anime recap until the end, comment down, "a godless man." If you like anime recaps like this, watch this video.